Welcome to Love in a Podcast. I'm Nathaniel, and right in front of me is my beautiful partner and co-host.
Hi, I'm Shiloh. Tonight, we are going to be talking about love in the new year.
Exciting.
This is a new year, right? Thank God. We'll be talking about what 2021 means to us and what we're doing each day to stay balanced. And although I'd love to detail each time I thought I lost my mind, we'll just give you an overview of that portion. Why are we talking about any of this, you might ask? Well, I don't know about you guys, but when I see something on social media or anywhere else that prompts a decent conversation with my loved ones, I'm really grateful that I found it. There's so much look at me out there and fake news. And I have a lot of extra time on my hands recently to read and to search things out. You can't imagine the shit that I see and where my mind goes after seeing it. God, comparison is not fun. I've experienced some serious depression, withdrawals, second thoughts, and very low lows in 2020. And I'll take a wild guess, but I assume at least one person listening can empathize. At the same time, I experienced miracles. I celebrated amazing wins for my life. I grew and morphed into a woman I am proud of. And I did it all with my partner with me.
Woo!
Lots of fun. Again, I believe you all out there can relate to the positivity. Anyway, we like to pour some more positive vibes, dare I say hope, into the universe. I'm one of those who says universe. If we mentioned something helpful, let us know. If we missed something you'd like to hear about, again, let us know. What in the hell was 2020 all about? No, seriously. I mean, I know none of us expected COVID, except a couple scientists out there, and the political chaos. I mean, up to a certain point, but wow. There were very important movements were blown up and awesomely magnified, like Black Lives Matter. And the Me Too movement continued strong, and I learned so much about sexism, gentrification, gender in general, racism, prejudices, and how they all relate to my life. I'm sure you all did too. These movements deserve their own episode, but what I will say is that we learned a ton of important and necessary lessons via each other's experiences, others' experiences, and it all will adjust my outlook for in the eternity. I also didn't realize how many out there were technically racist without truly accepting it. We could go on and on about our opinions, experiences, our letdowns, our lessons, but there's a huge chance that I won't stop talking and I might say things that I could regret. I don't know about you, Nathaniel, but I have a lot to say. Yeah. I might say things that I could regret. As I learn to navigate this podcast, I'm always deciding on my verbiage, my language, how much I want to divulge of my personal life and what I want to share. So as of right now, I'll share anything that might be of service to someone. I'm not going to fixate on whether or not I'll be judged, because that'll happen anyway. So with that out of the way, tell me, what the hell was 2020 all about? Side note, I'm not usually into reviewing the entire previous year or setting myself up with resolutions. This year is different. I think it's really important to reflect, and I'm seeing myself moving toward intentions and buzzword manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're here together, Nathaniel, what was 2020 like for you? So give us a snapshot in time.
Well, 2020 was a few days ago. You know, I'm one of those people that I just see a year and then the next year rolls on, and then, you know, I mean, considering the calendar is a social construct of mankind.
Oh my God.
It is one of those person. It is one of those things where 2020, you know, I had some ups and downs like everybody else, but you know, I think what magnified 2020 is the fact that we were all locked into our homes. You know, because the ups and downs that I had, I think could have come, other than one thing in particular, could have come anyway. And one of those things was that I did lose employment. as a result of COVID. Whereas if COVID had not happened, maybe I'd still be employed.
Right.
But for the most part, things actually went pretty well for me other than that,
Right.
For instance, and we'll be getting into it later. A lot of good things happened in our relationship.
Yeah.
Which
for sure.
Which in turn, goes, I mean, it just, it was just some good experiences. And I had a lot of mental breaks, and, they seem to pick up a lot more in 2020. But again, I don't know that has anything to do with the fact that it was 2020 and it seemed to be the year of hell. I don't know, but
I mean, I don't think we can disregard the fact that we were affected by the things that were happening in 2020. I do believe that things would have been differently in a lot of cases, but again, I don't do that what if game. I'm not playing what if, but yeah, I feel like, I don't know. Keep talking. I don't want to.
Well, no. Basically, what for me, the fact is that if COVID had hit, and then 2 months later it was 2021, would we still be having the same? Oh man, 2020 was hell. Because now it's been. Basically, what I'm saying is that we do put a lot of weight year to year. And it's
for sure.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I think every culture has their own variation.
Very much so. I mean, that's why, you have the Chinese New Year, for instance. That's a big deal, for the Chinese people. But I just think that, that with a lot of the year things, I mean, it's just a frame, but if years didn't exist, COVID still would have happened. We still would have been in that situation.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get to is that I also don't believe in resolutions. I think that resolutions are meant to be broken, and that's not a good thing. That's saying, why set yourself up for failure? And instead, maybe even no matter what time of year it is, whether it's maybe it just so happens it is January 1st, but what happens if you just decide to start changing things for yourself?
Right.
Shiloh's a great example of changing and going through these different changes, and she'll get into that later, but
thank you.
It's one of those things where you need to make that decision, and if you make that decision to make this big change January 1st, I would love to know the percentage of people that fail at that.
I think it's 10%, not even 10% of people keep their resolutions.
Right.
When I was doing research, resolutions I think are bogus. If you want to evolve as a human being, you can't wait until January 1st. You just can't. If you're in February and you see something that needs to change, get on that shit. There's no time like the present.
Or if you're at the end of the year and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to turn it all around on January 1st. That's not how life works. Life does not. For some people it works out, it does, but at the same time it's just one of those things where I think people should frame it differently. They should look at it differently.
Since we do have a calendar, since we do have a 12-month calendar,
right, it's there,
and since in a society we're talking about 2020 as being this monumental time in history, I do feel like this year is a little different. I want to reflect, because from last January to this January, I've changed a lot. I really have. I've done a lot of freaking changing. This is a perfect time to reflect on what happened.
I see nothing wrong with that at all.
Why not take one, episode and just focus on the reflection and focus on the intentions, knowing what I know now. How could tomorrow be for me? Knowing that I'm living every day, one day at a time, but having goals is something that I've always prided myself on, because if you try planning things, God or your universe or your many gods or the weather, whatever, it will take that plan and just shatter it.
Right.
But it gives you an opportunity to create a better plan, and you have to be resilient, and it's for a reason, folks, even if you don't see the reason why. Now, that's planning. My goal is going to be much larger, and it's on a bigger scale. you know? So as far as making resolutions, no, you don't wait. You should, I mean, I'm not going to tell you you should, but I personally like to continue the evolution progressively, and it has to happen organically within myself. That's it. That's all. But since it is a really great time to reflect, and since we are celebrating a new calendar year, I really think it's important that we reflect, intentionally reflect,
Well,
you know?
if I can just add to that, I mean, reflecting is a wonderful thing. You know, whether you're doing it, you know, in comparison to a calendar year from one year to another, it's how we learn. It's how we
Yeah.
you know, it's
Some
how we
people
change.
do it on their birthday.
Right. I mean, whatever.
I do that sometimes
Yeah.
too.
Whatever you choose to do. The one thing that I really want people to consider is that if you put so much weight into 2021 being a better year,
Oh yeah, that's
all I see right now. That's
dangerous.
everything is that this is my year. And it's like,
people are like, oh my God. My friend has a photo up on one of her social media platforms and just says something like, if I hear one more person say that 2021 is my year, just sit down, be quiet, and don't touch anything.
yeah.
Period.
You just, again, it's setting up for failure, and it's
setting up for some disappointment.
So what we're going to do tonight is a good example of something good to do, since we do live in a place where there is a calendar year, and you know, they're changing seasons, and there are all of these things. You know, what we're going to discuss tonight, or morning, if you're listening to this in the morning, is, you know, you're going to hear us reflect, and from that reflection, what we learn from it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if anything, I could do a quarterly inventory on myself, and just because for the hell of it, I can do anything I want with my time, you know, just like you can. Mm-hmm. You don't have to reflect at all. Just keep chugging along.
Which I've done that before too.
Yeah. There's no right way to do life. But since we do have this podcast and we do have this platform, and for me, I feel like it's important to remind myself of things that that kind of have evolved into, well, I'll get to that. Some things became really big, and some things just disappeared altogether. For me, I admitted some really heavy things out loud, and I say these things regularly to remind myself of who I am. Initially, doing this posed a huge threat to who I thought I was. But I continue to find motivation in my tribe of women and men who also have similar journeys. I purposefully found a tribe of human beings that I needed to have in my life. But that's a whole other episode. Just know that I took some serious looks in the mirror. I surrendered to reality, and I'm doing something about it finally. Well, not finally, it's just time for it. I wanted to begin this episode with that being said, as it's very instrumental in my current life. It's just like my meditation and yoga practice. It's extremely important. I will be speaking on mental health throughout this episode, mine and mine alone. Although when you reach out to us, I love to hear your experience. If mental health isn't your thing, I dive into other revelations too, and I'm sure you can relate to those. Mental health is a primary topic in my daily life, as Nathaniel and I both have our own illnesses, which totally determine our seconds to minutes to days to our whole life. So we can definitely shed some light on our own struggles with our mental health since the beginning of 2020. With that being said, there may be some trauma that we don't realize really affected us until later on. But for the most part, I'm pretty aware of how my depression and anxiety skyrocketed between being laid off to injuring myself, having surgery for the first time in my life. But also, I moved to a new state later on in the year, away from my
easily my favorite part of the year.
Oh, it was stressful. I mean,
of course,
like you can imagine, I moved away from my family and friends in New York, and I've relocated many times in my life, but this time it hit different. The quarantine times kept me from exploring my new city and finding a new place of employment and just plain socializing or practicing yoga in studios. You get the gist. It was different. But I did move toward my partner to a beautiful house, a place of love and comfort. But yeah, know that the anxiety was so real.
That is just, that little section that you just said, that's just so wonderful to hear.
You got to point out the really great things,
Of course.
Now, mind you, I had already been in this house for 6 months quarantining by the time I moved here. And I love this house. But you understand what it means to be in one place for so long. It's hard. And I moved right before having surgery. So unpacking and settling in, it took months. And all I wanted was to experience Pittsburgh with my partner, to practice yoga and to meet new like-minded people. So with that being said, I do feel like everyone has experienced some sort of sadness or anxiety during 2021. And again, I will only speak from my own personal experiences here. But mental health is tricky, it's sneaky, it's very serious, and it often remains uncovered way too often. So with your own journeys, I really hope you're seeking help as you venture into 2021 if you should need it, that you're taking it seriously, you're listening to your inner voice and listening to your mind and listening to your heart. So I'll be diving into some things that happened in 2020. Staying still, me, my body, my mind, staying still was a very difficult thing for me prior to 2020. I couldn't watch a full movie without moving around. I was always multitasking. I was always doing at least 2 or 3 things at the same time. I was always feeling so busy and pulled in all these different directions. So I couldn't sit still even if I wanted to. Like even my meditations were half-assed prior to 2020. And I must have known that on some level. Actually, I knew that on a deep and surface level. Plenty of distractions kept me from being still. And then January 2020, I decided to work with an energy healer. So I found this woman, she's a shaman, and to this day, she reminds me just to be and release the need to do.
She's a pretty incredible human being.
She really is. I'm talking with her in a couple of weeks, by the way. I should have a whole episode on my experiences with her.
I think you should see if she wants to come on the show.
Duh. What? Wow. Revelation after revelation, people. This is life. But I thought that working with a shaman would be my big self project for 2020. That's what I thought. So disillusioned. I committed to a 1-month yoga teacher training in Rishikesh, which is in the Himalayas, in the foothills of the Himalayas in India. I was planning or set the goal to get there by the end of 2020. So in February, I saved my place by putting a down payment in with the ashram. This isn't something that sounds strange to people who know me. I'm a big adventurer, but this trip had been in the works spiritually and mentally for many years. Now we're talking February. We went to Kripalu for Valentine's weekend to complete a course on sobriety with Ruby Warrington.
I just dove headfirst into yoga.
It was his second time practicing yoga, and he was doing it at Kripalu. And Kripalu is not some rinky-dink, not to take away from, small businesses. This is a very monumental place in the yoga world and meditation world. And we didn't do it because Valentine's weekend, we have to do something together. We were living in separate states. I love the book Sober Curious by Ruby Warrington. If you're interested in that sort of thing, it's a really great read. But she was doing workshops there for the weekend, and I jumped on it and I asked him and he wanted to go. So when we were there, we practiced yoga, obviously. We went to her seminars. We met people, and we were just blissfully happy with the state of the world, right? I mean, other than the usual complaints. We were totally ignorant as to what was to happen in March.
That's a really mild way to put it.
So in March, COVID dropped on our planet like a germ bomb. Creating huge amounts of fear, some of which was totally understandable and still is very understandable. Others were just fear of lack, not having enough. Remember when we couldn't find fucking toilet paper? That type of stuff. I was the manager on duty who closed the store until an unknown time, possibly indefinitely. I, had to do a double check on the refrigerator and garbages, all of the locks, and then getting my girls out of the store. It was all surreal. Like I looked around at my store and I said goodbye. I didn't know for how long. And immediately we made a joke. March Madness had a new meaning. Really corny, but we were trying to lighten the mood. It was crazy. Seeing all of the lights off in all of the stores, nobody around. But I don't know if I would have done anything differently in March had I known what was to come. I honestly don't think that way, that what if way. But being so unprepared for the mental strain, I don't know. It really kicked my ass. Like it really did.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that right there is probably one of the statements that's going to be the most relatable tonight.
Yeah. I mean, we all got our sanity, some parts of our sanity handed to us. But anyway, I mean, being that I was not working, I decided to drive to Pittsburgh to be with Nathaniel at the house. So at the end of March, I packed up the dogs and I drove. I have an entire episode written detailing the long distance relationships, but that's not happening yet. Maybe one day we'll get around to releasing it as a little extra.
I think I'd like to reevaluate it before we do.
Oh, for sure. I wrote that back in April when we were still living in a long distance relationship. But for this episode, all you need to know is that I drove here and I decided I wouldn't drink alcohol in Pittsburgh whatsoever. As
awesome.
long as we were quarantining. Nathaniel supported my decision, and being that we were in the house 24/7, it wasn't difficult to uphold. Seeing all my friends on social media with pics of fun drinks and wine, it did give me a huge sense of FOMO. I know how easy it is to hide in a forever long buzz. I missed it. And there were times when I wanted nothing more than to drink. It was really tough at times. It really was. Even though there's no alcohol in the house, I can't help but, I wanted to just get buzzed. I don't want to think about all these really, negative things, even though it doesn't have to be negative, but it's scary.
We really need to establish the fact that that was a really big goal. That was a really big goal for you.
Yeah, it was. It's something that I've had on the table for a long time, for my sanity and my well-being. So I decided, quarantine, I'm just not going to drink the whole time. So now we're in April. It's my first full month in Pittsburgh. The babies were with me still, of course. So we played house. It was so fun. It was so fun.
And the boys, Theo and Winston,
they loved,
they just, you bring such an energy and you have these great ideas for activities and projects. And it was amazing for them.
Nathaniel calls me a little girl at least once a day. You're such a kid.
She has a sense of wonder that I'd never seen in adults. And it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's an amazing quality.
It's something that I don't even have to think about. So that's why I get along with children so well, and sometimes I don't get along with adults very well because I am very much like a kid. But it was a lot of fun, and in April we also started this podcast. So he had the equipment. I wanted to write, and writing for this was a huge creative outlet, and we both needed to feel creative at this point. I wrote an entire episode called Love and a Pandemic, which we still haven't recorded. We could always do it as an extra to get a laugh because we were so impressionable and young back then. Oh, the things we didn't know. But also in April, I fell down the stairs and I ripped my rotator cuff, my right rotator cuff, unknowingly.
You're saying this really quickly. This was devastating.
Yeah, it was trauma.
We didn't know what it was. Well, go ahead.
The trauma, I don't know, I'm bringing this up because just a regular thing like falling down the stairs, it actually compounded into phases of frustration and sadness and irritation and anger. And I'm bringing it up because it's important to remember these things and how we overcome them. I'm sure someone can relate to just, say you got into a fender bender, but because it was quarantine, everything was so different. Like things got compounded, say you got into an argument with your significant other. You can't blow off steam at work. You can't go to the gym. You can't go out. You're there and you're dealing with it in a whole different way. So, I had to say goodbye to my yoga practice. I was working on just lower body things, but because it hurt so bad, I didn't really want to do things that would cause me to fall. If I had to catch myself, I would probably be way more injured.
Right.
So that happened in April. So bringing us into May, due to working in retail, we had a state-by-state decision where each governor decided whether stores would do curbside retail or not. We did not. So I was constantly on edge about whether or not I'd be staying in Pittsburgh or be driving back to central New York. I know you all had similar experiences, except healthcare workers and certain government employees. If I'm missing you, I'm really sorry. Just tell me I missed you. But there are some people who are still working, and I have so much respect and admiration for those people because it was scary. It was a scary time, but I found myself like really resenting the fact that I wasn't working. I'm a worker, I was working 2 jobs plus teaching yoga, and then I went into nothing. But I was really resenting my shoulder injury. And again, at this time, I didn't know the injury. I didn't know surgery would be in the future for me.
The hospital visit, they just made it seem like it wasn't anything. They didn't even do a scan.
They gave me an X-ray.
Yeah, they didn't do it.
Knowing that it wasn't out of There wasn't a break
socket. Or out of socket. It
was bizarre. And I was in there. I was the only patient except one other person who was having a mental breakdown next to me, screaming. And not that, I'm not picking on that person, but it's not like they were, busy, really I had 5 or 6 different people in and out. No one suggested having an MRI or anything.
This is the biggest hospital in Pittsburgh,
right?
In the whole area, all of Western Pennsylvania, actually, and a hospital where I also had terrible experience and had a life-changing surgery that was unnecessary at that exact location. Needless to say, both of us having bad experiences. I even worked for that hospital, and they were
100% chances of having a shitty experience
at this point now. Yeah.
But, I didn't know I would need surgery. So I had a lot of anxiety about that. And I was holding a lot of anxiety in my body, which was, causing more physical pain and probably keeping me from sleeping well, because my body was all like, what the hell? Are we collecting dust this year? Why aren't we working? Where are all the downward dogs at? What's happening? So I had many different levels of depression here. Some days I cried. Some days my energy was totally zapped. And some days I slept like an infant. In May, I also realized that I had vertigo. I had another episode of vertigo. So the dizziness in vertigo is overwhelming. If you haven't experienced it, just imagine knowing your feet are touching the ground, but your mind is telling you that you're spinning off the earth and you're floating away into a dark place where you may or may not vomit once you get there. So I couldn't put my head back or my head to the right. I couldn't lie down on my back without spinning like crazy. So this also added to my depression and me feeling purposeless. I couldn't even sleep comfortably. So just know, if you felt down or low or depressed at any time in May, I was right there with you. We were looking at the same moon, feeling the same feelings. And you can verify that.
Very much.
It was pretty bad. A side note here, it was so quiet in the world. I could hear all the voices in my head. Totally surreal how things present themselves when we shut up. If you're listening to this, you know what I mean. You and I and everyone else here survived. For those who didn't, take a second to remember how fucking fortunate you are. Give thanks. Tell your people you love them. Okay, back to this weird ass timeline.
You crack me up.
June and July brought a couple trips back to central New York to work at my second job, which is a nonprofit organization. So I had to do a certain amount of hours a month so I can keep my position there. If you were traveling around at any time, I didn't want to, but I did want to keep I love working with, it's a nonprofit. Like I said, I love working with this organization. So I didn't want to lose my position. Traveling back and forth was kind of stressful. I had to take a lot of precautions, of course. I was usually the only one driving on the road, on the highways. So if you were traveling, you get that. I mean, it was surreal.
Well, I think one of the craziest things, so in Pittsburgh, I-376, so the interstate, has one of the most dangerous on-ramps in the entire country. And I'm not kidding. It's rated as one of the worst,
it's Russian roulette.
So basically what it is that you come to a stop, and every lane is going 55 miles per hour or faster.
70.
And you have to go from a dead stop, a stop sign, into that traffic. Well, I say this because I was coming home and I was getting on the on-ramp, not a single car. There's always cars. It's the busiest highway in all of Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Big city. And it was empty. I've never seen that in my life, and it was so cool. I just
He's like, it's like a zombie apocalypse out there.
I crossed 4 lanes of traffic in about 12 feet,
Now, don't get me wrong. It was really cool driving during this time. It felt like one of those post-apocalyptic sci-fi movies.
Mm-hmm.
Really. It was very, very cool. But so while I was in New York, now mind you, my grandma was 91 at the time. And since she's my favorite person on the planet, keeping her safe was my top priority. I was really getting nervous about staying at my mom's house, even though, I was staying away from her. But I don't know, you know what it's like. Do you have any people in your life who are high risk?
Yeah.
If so, you get the threat that their exposure poses. This is just another reason why we can look back and be grateful for the people we still have with us. Mm-hmm. So I continued to talk with my shaman every 3 to 5 weeks, and just continued the energy healing and the work of that, bringing pieces of myself out of the shadows. She has very, very much brought a different type of reflection, different type of self-awareness. And my sense of self has changed since starting with her. It was, I looked to the sessions very fondly, but more than that, I found peace and refuge in knowing that I was sharing openly, being seen and heard, and I could truly find my power inside rather than doing outside things. Meeting with her, and I mention her because meeting with her was one of the things that saved my sanity, saved my soul in a way that if I didn't have her, it would have been much, much harder for me.
You're such a hippie.
I mentioned her because if you had something in your life that kept you, balanced in a way and kept you looking forward to something. So you know what that's like, and now I used to take things for granted, having things to do all the time, things to look forward to over and over again, things coming up. And this was one of those things for me. It was either the grocery store or, talking to her or, Nate and I doing something. I don't know. So I just hope that you had something that was similar. And now, we're in June and July, but I was still dizzy as hell every day. Walking, I'm totally bent over walking, scooting my feet along the floor, hanging onto walls, hanging onto Nathaniel, anything that's stable to keep myself from falling. Falling. So, just a struggle. I just want everyone to know that you're not alone in your struggles.
Right.
Oh, and did I mention that Dodger's eyeball popped out of his head? It popped out of his head.
Yeah, or a little Pekingese.
We drove like crazy to the animal hospital. But because of COVID, we waited in the car for 40 minutes and I just sprayed his eyeball with my saline for my contacts. Thank God the surgery saved his eye, but it was just really scary for everyone. The healing was a really long road and there was a comma in the price tag. And I would do anything for the babies. Dodger knows that. Just, if it was different, COVID changed how that happened, how that unfolded, so if you did, yeah.
I mean, and then when my oldest son, his eyeball popped out, she was like, we'll just wait. It's okay. It'll probably go back in on its own.
He wears a patch now. Oh God. How did your animals adjust out there? I bet having you around was really thrilling to them. That's a positive thing. So while this is all happening, I was meeting with orthopedic specialists, a couple here and there. And finally, I got an appointment with a real ortho, but it was on the exact day I was supposed to return to work early in August. So I went, expecting to get an MRI or a sling or a hall pass to find another doctor, just something. But he said I was out of work until an MRI told us what's happened in there, and I could not get in until September. It's like, what? Okay, that's okay. I can't do anything about that. And then he also said he wasn't going to see me anymore, and I'd be meeting with someone from Canada. And I'm like, seriously, you're dumping me already? Being removed from work caused me to keep in touch with HR for company reasons, and I was also staying in contact with the management team at work. They were very, very stressed, and I felt like I was letting them down. It was pretty hard. But again, I know that it was for my best interest because I was really injured. I couldn't lift anything. So I mean, yeah, I'm not going to go into feeling guilty. But 2 weeks later, I got a call from Human Resources, and they basically said thanks but no thanks to me returning to work. Once I got the MRI, had surgery or not, whatever steps I was planning on taking, as soon as I was released back from my doctor, I was no longer with the company. Boom. Silver lining, I still had insurance. If you can relate to any of this, I'm here for you. Let me know your experience. It's, being let go in any capacity really sucks. There's this feeling of purposelessness, and it compounded here. Like, I did feel betrayed. I felt like I wasn't anything more than a number, and I was honestly really hurt. And I'm still hurt kind of now. There's still that feeling of like, I don't know. I don't even know if it's a word, but if you went through something similar, you can relate to that. Something miraculous happened in the first week of September, and it's what I was mentioning at the beginning of this episode, so I won't divulge much as I'm not really ready to yet. But let's just say I joined a fellowship of humans who support each other with an unmanageable element in their lives, and I went really hard at this. I took stock of my blessings. I checked myself, destructive patterns, my responsibilities. It's been a really wild ride. I have so many reasons for feeling big gratitude here. But, all of the things that happened in 2020, I was aware of the lessons, and I saw no reason for postponing this important step in my life. And it was huge.
It was gigantic.
It was really big. And, I thought I was crying before. Yeah, right. The tears were a-flowing, people, on the daily.
Yes, they were.
On the upswing, surgery was scheduled for the middle of October, but this is my first surgery I've ever had. I'll go more into it in another episode if you want to listen to that. But overall, it went great. My family was amazingly supportive. It was a day surgery, so I was released back to my mom's house, and she was just unbelievable. Other members of my family helped. My Aunt Greta. My Aunt Lori was there. My cousin Regina, her two girls. I don't want to say their names because they're underage. You know, it was amazing. The help and the care I received, it was enough for me to write a contract should any future surgeries happen. So she is forever my nurse mom. I love you, Mom. In terms of family, what did you all experience with yours? I mean, was there closeness? Was it really hard being apart from others? Were there annoyances or extra gratitude? I felt so many things that I wouldn't have had happen if I didn't have the surgery and if it wasn't COVID. The really hard part about this was that Nathaniel was in Pittsburgh at a work thing.
Which was pointless because I ended up not having to do the thing they said I had to do on that particular day.
So he missed the day of that. And I called him. I was FaceTiming him. I took my phone like a little raccoon in my paws. I ran into the corner of a room, sat on a mini stool, and was crying, ugly crying on the phone with him.
It was so
my family is
heartbreaking.
Out. They're like, "Where's Shiloh? Shiloh, where are you?"
Well, you got to also explain why.
Oh, there's the drugs.
There
I
you
was
go.
knocked out. I've never had surgery before, so I'm coming out of it. All I wanted was for him to be there.
It was the hardest thing. There was the absolute, and that was especially because
So
again,
I hid.
so she hid, and
bedroom.
that day again, I was supposed to be doing this work thing, and it didn't end up happening.
No.
And and so to hear her like that, and just see your face, and just not be there for you when I should have been, was devastating.
Yeah, it was a difficult time. If anything, if you guys can relate to any of that, I would love to hear your stories too, because everything would have been different had COVID not been there. So this is just another thing to look back on and be like, okay, this was surreal and pretty bizarre. He had a couple of episodes during this time. But once he was, so not to get ahead of myself, he drove the 7 hours as soon as he possibly could to pick me up. He took amazing care of me. I have never been cared for with so much love and attention. This is not like a rah, look at my great relationship. This is you have a relationship where, you have this type of bond, and this relationship with someone is really, you'll know when you have it, and you will have it. You'll know, like, this, he took care of me in such a way. And this was even while he was having a couple of episodes during this time. So between my arm, the surgery, obviously the shoulder, and the healing, and his mental health, our hands were really full, very full. And I can thank him forever. I don't know if he'll really understand the depth of my gratitude, though. So with that being said,
you deserved every single bit of comfort I could try to give you.
I really appreciated that, you guys, so much. Like, seriously, I don't know. It was another reminder of that, like, this is my person, I
think, I really do believe I've never been like that for anyone, by the way. We touch on this every episode where in my previous relationships, I was not a caring individual. No. I was not at all. And so for me to instinctively want to do whatever I could for Shiloh was a big deal. And it's something I didn't really think about until after, because it was like, I didn't know that that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to be like when the person you love is in need, or anybody that you love is in need, for you to just jump up and help. I think the only person I was ever like that with before was my mom, whenever my mom needed help, but, who's an incredibly strong person. So it's not exactly
she's a warrior,
a common situation where she needs anyone's help, but it's just about the only other experience I ever had in that way. So I'm sorry. I really hope,
I just really hope that you out there, I hope you have that in your life. I really do. I never had that before. And so, it just changed a lot of things for me. Not a lot of things, but it morphed into like a huge gratitude, totally different level of appreciation. So I mentioned that it was my right shoulder, and I am right-handed. So I had to learn how to eat with my left, but that wasn't really a big deal. It was pretty simple. I really missed washing my own hair, but he was washing my hair.
I learned.
blow drying my hair. He was putting mousse in my hair.
Your Graham loved that the first time I did it.
Oh my God. She was laughing until she was crying.
She's hilarious.
He was doing my hair just like a stylist out in the dining room, and she was just cracking up. But I missed being self-sufficient. I missed walking the babies and pulling my own shoes on. Due to all of this, in a nutshell, I will never take for granted my ability to support myself ever again, ever. But I had someone who helped me cook and make food and put lotion on my back. He helped me get comfortable every single day. I am so grateful. He even put a ball mouse thingy on the desk for the PC so I could navigate it easier with my left hand.
We went head first into Alexa for her to, turn lights on, control the TV, control the doorbell, all that fun stuff, which was fun for me. I mean, that was a blast.
It was just really amazing. I hope you all have something like that. So I started physical therapy after a couple of weeks. If you've had surgery, you understand physical therapy comes next. So I very slowly allowed myself to really heal. And with that in mind, quick story, I love to walk around outside, like not in people's yards. And,
that would be amazing to get that call.
I stay out of people's yards, but I walk through our neighborhood because the houses are beautiful and the weather is usually pretty decent. But, fresh air clears my mind unlike any other element. I continued to walk with my huge cannon-like sling, and I saw this woman collecting leaves. She had like 10 large bins of leaves on the side of the road, and she was collecting from other people's yards. She asked me about my arm, and we talked about that and other things for about 15 minutes.
It's a long time to talk to, a perfect stranger.
We had an amazing connection. We really did. She was explaining how she does composting, and apparently the leaves are really magical for it. Mm-hmm. But before we departed, she told me that I had permission to heal. And all of the sadness, not all of the sadness, but the anxiety and the sadness will pass. But she said that to me. I had permission to heal. It was really powerful. Tears sprang up in my eyes, and I thanked her, and I placed my left hand on my chest, and I just let that settle in. And immediately in my mind, it said, my mind was like, I'm still strong even now. And I had to remind myself of that. Moments like this is when I took note of the good in other people, the good I have in my life. So for you guys, did you also have moments like this where you could pause and be calm and know that you're okay or know that you're not okay? I did a lot of that in 2020.
I remember after you had met her and just the energy you had, it was pretty amazing. And I remember asking you, did you get her information? And just like me, that didn't even cross your mind. I would have done the same thing.
I wish I had.
And is she a neighbor or was she just helping someone?
No, she was just in the neighborhood. She had asked people if she could collect leaves.
Oh, yeah.
And she was collecting leaves. But her license plate said something really funky too.
Oh, it's too bad you can't remember it.
I know. But hopefully our paths cross again. If not, then we were just meant to meet that day and exchange what we did. But the end of 2020 looked a lot like this. Okay. Questioning daily what my purpose is. Reminding myself it's a silly question because maybe I'm already serving my purpose, but then turning around and contradicting myself by diving into thoughts of my dream career and remembering that I'm not doing it, but then circling back to how career doesn't equal life purpose. That was constant. And in between some of the simple and complicated conversations with myself and Nathaniel, there were runs to Joann's Fabric and ordering Christmas gifts online.
She is addicted to Joann's Fabric.
I love it. I do. Everything's always on sale. It's phenomenal. And I want to learn how to sew. Although I have sewn a little bit in the past, but I want to learn how to create patterns. And, I need to do it. But I love Joann's Fabrics.
We gotta get my mom set up to do like a masterclass thing for you.
Yeah, that would be amazing. She told me she was going to teach me how to sew.
Oh, I believe it.
We have to do it on FaceTime. Anyway, so that's another thing. So I love you, Mama. But so I was running around at Joann's in grocery stores. Like when I say running around, once a week or not even. But I was tackling physical therapy twice a week. And I would have to catch myself when ruminating on how many freaking times I lost my mind. It was around 187. There was one major anxiety attack where I thought I was going to die. If you've had anxiety attacks, you know. If you don't, it's really freaking scary. I've never felt this way before. It was, there was so much sweat pouring out of me. Like the backs of my hands were soaked even.
The physical manifestation of her anxiety, kind of threw me off because, I saw her going through this thing and this physical, and I started asking her questions, but then we pretty quickly got it narrowed down to your anxiety. Mm-hmm. And it was just a matter of getting you, in a good place.
So it was just coming out of me,
It was just so devastating to watch.
I made animal noises for like 15 minutes, screaming and shaking like a leaf. And I prayed to pass out.
Shiloh is one of the most incredible creatures on this planet. So when you see someone going through something like that, and all of you that know Shiloh know what I'm talking about.
It wasn't something that's normal for me. It changed me a little bit.
And if anyone listening, is going through their own anxiety and depression, and maybe they have a different mental illness or anything, if you ever need to share your story or anything, let us know. I mean, we'd love to talk with you.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
It doesn't mean we have to interview you. We just want to talk to you. I mean, we all have common ground in that way.
So he guided me back to a safe place in my mind. And I did come back to the moment and being present and knowing I'm safe. Immediately afterward, I asked for a piece of chocolate. And I promptly fell asleep while sitting up on the couch.
That chocolate, though, brought your blood sugar back to a good place.
It did. 3 hours later, I came to, and the first thing I thought, what the hell was that? But am I okay? And I immediately said, I am okay. You are okay. You're just a human being who had some sort of breakdown, just so much released out of my body, my mind, my spirit. Like I felt much lighter. I felt comfortable in my skin. Yes, it was very scary, and no, I wouldn't want it to happen again. But if it does happen, I know it's because whatever this is, toxins, energy, the noises, whatever is going on in there has to release. Also, I learned that my safe word is grass. During the breakdown, it's the most neutral thing that Nathaniel said, and it calmed me down. Grass. So when I think of grass, the grass is greener where you water it, pops into my head, and I smile. So maybe that's what I needed to hear. As we slide ourselves into a new year, it's paramount that we reflect on this monumental time in our lives. There will never be a year like 2020. It will go down in history as a time when things really, really changed. Just, think of all the turning points in history, but on steroids. As a world, we witness shifts and personal and, growths of people that we know in our own challenges and lessons on a really monumental scale. But we survived. You survived. We thrived. Even breaking down is thriving in my eyes.
Yes.
And believe it or not, we all did it together. So what I'm bringing into 2021 is a newfound outlook on my life. Really, truly, no bullshit. I turned 37 this past year. I injured myself and experienced some real physical pain. It was instrumental in creating a lot of emotional and mental issues. I had my first surgery. I was laid off. I moved to a different state and moved in with my partner. I gained a whole family. I started seeing a shaman. I stopped drinking alcohol. I started this journey to train in India. I started an extremely important relationship with Nathaniel's boys. I joined a life-changing fellowship and gained sisters and brothers for life. I started this podcast. I started healing on a whole new level. I would love for you to reflect. I would love for you to share what you're walking into 2021 with. I'm just really curious. You guys are like my family at this point, so I'm, for like quickly, I'm walking through life with boundaries. Like I was a huge people pleaser, which I thought was me being kind. But no, that's not being kind. It's being mean to myself. So now I have boundaries. I'm walking in with appreciation for the ability to care for myself, a huge appreciation for my partner. I'm so freaking grateful for him.
It's mutual, trust me.
I think they can tell. I now have appreciation for simple things that are really their gifts of life, like forging the relationships with my family and washing my hair and downward dogs, just sleeping on my back, paying bills, creating healthy meals. I could literally go on for hours. I learned how to be. That's what it took for me to learn how to just be. I released toxins and I built foundations. I will continue to pay attention, really pay attention, and one thing at a time, just to simplify things. I will continue to read every day. I will never take my yoga practice for granted again. I won't take many, many things for granted again. And I've also written down so many things that I can't let myself forget. I need to be able to look back and reflect on that year when I'm not right-sized in the future. So in ending, I would like to quote a couple of very powerful women who pretty much in a nutshell give us what we can think of when the year closes. So I don't know how to say her name. I'll start with Miriam Ajayi. She is the energy healer and founder of Dive In Well. She says, for me, as a year closes, I like to relish at how far along I've come through another cycle. I use the end of the year as a time to look back at the moments I am proud of in order to draw inspiration and the hard moments to assess the lessons that I needed to learn. I move through the self-inquiry with the help of journaling, meditation, and the tarot as a way to tap into my higher self and ancestors to truly get to the heart of the matters, rather than moving through them with the thinking brain. Then I use breath work to release what no longer serves me and call in the things that I would like to expand upon in the upcoming year. I just thought that was really cool that she has a different way of doing it.
Right.
You know, everyone have a different way of doing it. And then Nikki de Saint-Amour, she is an embodiment movement teacher. And she said, I experience and embrace the turning point, I can then participate in new beginnings. Many of us might fear endings, but it is a natural cycle of our evolution and our myth. Endings bring us face to face with the unknown. Yet they also establish a relationship between ourselves and the unknowns. As I trust in this body wisdom, my intuition, I trust there will be a new relationship and there will be a new beginning. There will be spring once again. Bam.
Bam.
So that's it, guys. That's all we've got for episode 4. Love in a new year. Again, I say it all the time, but give us some feedback, show us some love, give us some of your time and your energy and your words, and let us know how you feel, what you're thinking. Yeah. Maybe you have a different type of practice for ringing in the new year, but whatever it is, just know that we are here and that we hear you. So until next week.
Yeah. Until next week.
Thank you all so much. Love you.
We believe reflection is just as important as setting intentions. Don't forget where you came from and find the message in the mess. We thank you for your love and support. Did you like today's episode? Subscribe to us on Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to follow us at Lovin' a Podcast on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.com/LovinAPodcast. Learn more about us on our website, lovinapodcast.com. Next week, my friends.